Hello everyone, and welcome to Quarrelsome Rhinoceros Stitches, episode number 27. My name is Monica, I'm the host. You can find me as Quarrelsome Rhino on Instagram. You can find me as Morux, M-O-R-U-X, on Ravelry. And you can find me at my website, skeinoofthought.com. Today, it is the second time I've tried to record this episode. I did go through and record yesterday, but my puppy was not very cooperative, and I figured I would just re-record today. So today is March 29th. It has been quite a while since I've podcasted. I do apologize. I have been pretty busy with work. Working at a specialty chocolate shop tends to take... holidays are pretty rough. They take a lot to get ready for them. And so I've been working quite a bit. So, this is a knitting podcast. I do knit, I crochet, I do a little bit of cross stitch, and I do have a little bit of cross stitch to share with you today as well. It's a present that I'm trying to finish by May, so hopefully it'll be done. But yeah, so I figure I should just get right into it, and then I won't waste any time. So the first finished object that I have to share with you is the Czech sweater that I was working on. If you watched last episode, I have been knitting a Czech sweater for a good friend of mine, and I have finished it. I have not finished it, but I have finished it. It is off the needles. So there is the Czech sweater. This is a pattern by Andy Satterland, and it is knit on a US 8, which is a 5mm needle. It is not blocked. I have not woven in any of the ends, so that is why it is not finished. But I knit this, the size in the pattern is almost exactly her measurements, so I didn't even have to modify anything. I knitted exactly to pattern. I even knit the sleeves to pattern length. So there is that. It is finished. The yarn is Lion Brand Fisherman's Wool in the oatmeal colorway, and it is so pretty. I absolutely love this yarn. I believe that it is 100% pure virgin wool. That is what I remember from the ball band, which I don't have anymore. I do have a little bit of leftover of this yarn, so I may end up making a hat, which is kind of ridiculous because I bought three of the big, they're like 200 grams skeins of it, when I worked at a craft store because I got a discount. And so I bought 3 big balls of it because I didn't know what sweater I wanted to make. And so I ended up making a Czech sweater for myself and realized when I was done that I would have enough to make a second Czech sweater out of the yarn. And then I didn't realize that I would have enough again to make, I think I have enough to make a colorwork hat. Like if I use that as one of the colors in the colorwork hat. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so I really enjoy this pattern. I have knit it twice now. I would say I still don't think that a beginner knitter would be really comfortable knitting this pattern. I think it's doable, obviously, but if you've never knit a sweater before and you don't know shaping, it may be a little bit more difficult. Excuse me. But yeah, I think that I will put aside that pattern for now because I have knit 2 versions of it in a short span of time. The first Czech sweater, if you want to go back and see how I did the other Czech sweater, it is in episode number 19, and I'll try and put a link in my pattern notes, or my pattern notes, in my show notes today, so you can see that. So yeah, I finished mine in episode 19, and I figured out and I made a second one. So there is that. That is my first finished object. My second finished object I actually can't show you. It is, I used the stitch patterns from the Caprius shawl by Frenchie of Aroha Knits, and I was using a worsted weight cotton yarn and a US 7 needle, which is a 4.5 millimeter. And it was a present for my grandmother. I'll put a picture in right here so you can see. But I've already gifted it to her, so I can't actually share it with you. It is one of the first gift knits of the year. I have several gift knits planned and in progress right now, so I'm hoping to get those done so that I can feel good about actually knitting things that I want to knit for myself. But yeah, so those are my two finished objects. I haven't had a whole lot of knitting time in the last couple of weeks, so I haven't really been able to do a whole lot, and what I have done is actually on all of my whips instead of like on several different projects rather than just trying to focus on one. So my first work in progress, since we're moving right along, is so I am knitting a pair of socks. I've shown you this before. This is my the socks that I'm knitting for my aunt. It is a really cool, just sort of self-striping, self-patterning yarn from Premier Yarns, and it's their wool-free sock line. I didn't realize it was going to stripe when I started knitting it, and it was a really nice surprise. It's not so contrasting that I get really excited when there's a color change, unfortunately, but it's still pretty cool. So I decided to do an afterthought heel so that it'll go in right here. I did put a piece of scrap yarn. I knit a scrap yarn row there so that I can go back and pick up those stitches. I do like the cutting method, but this actually just works better for me for this particular sock. So I got to the end of this sock and I did not feel like doing a Kitchener stitch, and I did not feel like casting on again at the rib, so I put in some scrap yarn again and then started a toe. So I'm probably a little bit over a quarter of the way done with the foot. I think I'm a little bit, I guess I must be about halfway done with the foot almost. But I just did toe increases. I'm basically doing a cuff down and then a toe up sock, and then I will cut them apart and I will Kitchener both toes and put in both heels, and then they'll be done. And so that is kind of an experiment. I'm calling them my lazy socks because I was too lazy to Kitchener and I was too lazy to cast on a second sock. So just knitting it in a long tube, and hopefully it'll work out right and I'll be able to be finished with these pretty soon. Here's what's left of my first ball of yarn. I have a feeling I'm going to use like maybe 15 grams of the second ball, and then I'll be done. They came in like 50, I think they came in 50 gram balls. But yeah, so I am using, I think it's a 2.25. Yeah, I'm using a 2.25 millimeter needle. I'm using bamboo DPNs. My DPNs are so bent, which is one of the reasons why I don't like wooden DPNs. Actually, my metal DPNs do bend too if they're in this size, but it's just because of the tension that I put on my needle while I'm knitting. They're still perfectly usable. I just end up going through a lot more needles than I want to. I don't want to have to be buying sock needles all the time. But yeah, so that is my first work in progress. I'm almost done with this. I would like to be finished with it so that I can give it to my grandmother to bring to my aunt in June when she goes to visit. So hopefully that'll be done by then. I know it is the end of March. I should be able to finish a pair of socks before June. brings me to my next gift knit. So I do have quite a few gift knits on the agenda here. So this is, I'm knitting this out of Knit Picks Stroll in the Marine Heather colorway. My mother bought this yarn and I'm knitting her a shawl with it. And she picked out the shawl. So she picked out the yarn, she picked out the shawl, but she picked out, I gave her a list of what I would be willing to knit for her out of this yarn. Or just out of yarn, I guess. And all of them were patterns by Joji Locatelli because I really enjoy the construction of most of her shawls and most of her garments. And I knew that if anything my mother picked from Joji, I would really enjoy knitting. So she chose the Imagine When shawl. So here is the beginning of the Imagine When. So I really like the yarn. I love the tweedy bits. I really like the pattern. I am on the 4th section of this shawl. So I'm hopefully, yeah, I am hopefully going to finish this up soon-ish. It does take quite a bit. I mean, and it is garter stitch, so it's going to be, it's squishy and it's going to be a lot more knitting to make it the length that I want it to be, or the pattern has it be. So it is quite a bit more knitting, but I'm hoping that I can make some good progress on it. So yeah, I'm done the first repeat of section 4. I think there are 6 repeats total on section 4. I've got 5 more to go. But yeah, so there's that. It's a really good pattern. I really like how it's constructed. And I mean, as with all of Joji's garments, like it's a really interesting construction. So it actually keeps me, I guess garments and accessories, it actually keeps me interested in the knitting. So, yeah, the Imagine One is actually a pattern that I've been really wanting to knit for a long time. So just the fact that my mom picked that one, I was actually really happy because now I get to knit it. So yeah, I'm keeping that in the project bag that I made for myself out of some plaid yarn or fabric. Yeah, I still really like this bag, even though there are so many problems with it. It is the first thing that I sewed with my new sewing machine that I got for Christmas. And it's a pretty good skein or shawl bag size thing. Anyway, yeah, so there is that. There's yarn flying all over the place. So that is the last gift knit that I have going on. And I honestly think that'll be the last. Oh no, I do have a pair of socks that I have to knit for my grandmother. So I have one more gift knit after that to knit after these things are done so I can knit a pair of socks for my grandmother. Which, yeah. After that, I'm hoping to be a little bit more selfish with my knitting so that I can get some stuff that I've been wanting to finish out of the way. Get a couple of, I have a couple of sweaters planned that I would really like to finish or really like to start. So yeah, I want to knit the sweaters so that I can get rid of some sweaters from my wardrobe. I would like to, as one of my goals for that started last year, was that I would like to replace all of my sweaters, my store-bought sweaters, with hand knit sweaters. And I'm going to show you some of the yarn that I have for that actually today, after I'm done with this work in progress. So my next work in progress, I'm holding in this lovely bag here. I've got my little coffee knit sleep repeat stitch for our pin from Knit Picks. And yeah, I love this bag. It is big, and I really like the leather contrast here. Anyway, so I am knitting a new shawl pattern, and I wanted to share with you my progress on it. I do have to rip this progress out because I've changed the shape of the shawl since I did this. So here it is. So this yarn here is Little Bean Loves, I believe, in the Slytherin Common Room colorway. This is a really, really gorgeous green, yellow, blue, sort of variegated yarn. And then I have this black is Nitpick Stroll in the black. And it is really hard to share black lace with you, but it is, that might be a little bit better. So this shawl is called the Black Lake Shawl. I may change that to Black Lake Wrap, but it is inspired by Harry Potter, and this lace is supposed to be reminiscent of seaweed. So there is garter section, there's a striping section, there's a lace section, and then it'll do striping and garter again on the other side. So it is kind of like a side-to-side triangle sort of wrap. I am going to change the positioning of the cast on because I think it'll just look better when it's finished. I just wanted to share with you, this is my next design project that I'm working on right now. I'm hoping to get a swatch in the lace done so I can have a better picture of it, hopefully in the pattern itself. So I'm gonna probably knit it out of like white yarn and put it in the pattern so that you can see it a little bit better, because I know that black yarn is really hard to see the details on, so especially in pictures. So that's what I'm gonna hopefully do here pretty soon. I'm gonna rip this out. I wanted to share it with you before I ripped it out and started over. So there is that. Eventually the edge of the shawl is going to have fringe on it. And there is another pattern, I forgot to look up the name of it, that does the same sort of technique, where you make fringe after you're done without having to add any strings on. So I'll put those in my pattern, in my show notes if I can think of the pattern name. But yeah, so those are actually all of my whips. I'm not whip crazy at the moment, which is great. Well, it's almost all of my whips. I was gonna share my my granny stripe blanket also, because I haven't shared it in a while. I haven't really worked on it a whole lot since the last time I shared it with you, but I really love this thing. Every time I pull it out, I really want to put more rows onto it. Let me see if I can find the stitch marker. Nope, I wouldn't be able to find it at the cast on edge. So yeah, I really haven't done a whole lot since I last showed it to you. I've put on like a row and a half-ish. So I measured to my bed when I did my cast on stitches, so it is pretty wide, and I probably should have, yeah, so it's about my arm span. So, and I probably should have started with a bigger, thicker hook. I am using a 3.125 millimeter, so it's a D hook. So it is fairly small, but that's gonna make like a way denser fabric, so it's gonna be a lot warmer because there's gonna be a lot more yarn in it. But yeah, every time I look at this, it makes me so happy. Right now I'm crocheting with some yarns gifted to me by Suzanne of Green Lambkin Yarns. When we did the Get Your Yarn Wishes Granted, I asked for some minis, and she sent me some lovely, lovely minis. And this is one of the ones she sent to me. I still have a couple more that she sent to me. So I've got this one here is one that that she sent to me. This one here is one that she sent to me. And I think the one underneath it is also one she sent to me. So I'm really excited. I wound a gobstopper ball. I used magic knots, and they've worked so far. So I'm keen on keeping that method going because I don't like to weave in ends. I really just don't. Or not that I don't like to weave in ends, I just would prefer them to be done with when I'm finished with a project. So if I weave in ends as I go, I like them because I find it really satisfying to do it, but I really want it to be done when I'm done with the project. So this Czech sweater not having the ends woven in is entirely out of laziness, and I need to just get it done so I can wash it and block it and get all of my hair off of it. Okay, sorry. Anyway, so now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the sweaters that I sort of hinted at that I wanted to make this year. So I have a sweater's quantity of this yarn here. It's Cascade 220. It is the first Cascade 220 that I have ever had, and I'm gonna make a sweater out of it. It is 100% Peruvian Highland wool. It is a worsted weight, I believe. Either worsted or Aran weight. Yeah, let's see, 18 to 20 stitches per 4 inches on a US 7 to 8. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's a worsted weight. But yeah, so this gorgeous green yarn is kind of like a Kelly green-ish. The colorway number is 8894. It's called Christmas green. But yeah, I'm really, really excited. It's a little bit more saturated than it is showing up on camera. But I really love this yarn. I am really excited to knit with it. And I'm going to be making a garment by Joji Locatelli. I've talked about her a lot. Anyway, so I already have one sweater that is designed by Joji, which is the Old Romance. And I'm working on the Imagine When, and I just really love how she writes her patterns. So I am going to be making the Rhapsody in Cables sweater. I'll try and put a picture here out of this green yarn, and I'm really, really excited for it. I think this is maybe my next cast on, but yeah. And continuing on the Joji Locatelli theme, which I didn't realize this episode was going to have before I started, so I guess this warrants a little bit more of a story. So last year I was a test knitter for the Making Stories Woods book, and I was really fortunate to get a spot test knitting for them. I had a wonderful time test knitting. I really enjoy the socks that I knit, and I had a second project. So the second project is the Black Forest cardigan, and it was knit out of some yarn that I had never used before, and I was really excited to try it out. And so it is the Derirum Natura Serrano, and I got the colorway Plume. And so it's 100% merino, and it is really gorgeous. It is really gorgeous yarn. And so I knit the sweater, and I never wore it. I finished it last April. I never wore it a single time except to go take pictures of it out in an orchard when I was allowed to share pictures of it. So I decided that since I've never worn it and I never will wear it, and it's mostly I don't want to say it's anyone's fault. I just didn't really care for the shape of it, and by the end of it, and so I wasn't gonna wear it, so I just decided to pull it out. Now, it broke my heart because it was a lot of work. It was a lot of, because fisherman's rib is basically brioche. So it was, or it's like a half brioche, I don't know. It's a lot of knitting, and it was a lot of weight. I think I had 13 skeins, maybe 11 skeins of this yarn altogether. So that's like, it's a pretty hefty kind of shawl sweater. And so I pulled all of the yarn out, and so this is the yarn itself. I have soaked the rest of the yarn except for this one lonely skein, and it is drying in my basement right now. Because it is very kinky, because I've knit with it before. So I'm going to soak this yarn, and I'll hang it with its friends down in the basement. So I did this yesterday. So after I recorded my podcast episode yesterday, I went and I soaked the yarn. I felt really accomplished because I had done something. I've done something knitting related, and then so I put it all in the basement, and then I come back up to clean up the bathroom a little bit, and I realized that this lonely skein was on the floor and not wet like the rest of them. So I at least get to share it on the podcast, because I didn't realize at that point I was going to re-record. So at least I get to share it on the podcast, but this is the renegade skein that got away from me. Anyway, so I went through on Ravelry and I saw, I tried to see what other people were knitting with this yarn, so that I could see maybe sort of what I wanted to knit with it, so that I would actually wear it. And I have had a pattern, and I've talked about it before. I've had a pattern in my stash, my projects on Ravelry, or my library on Ravelry, for years. I've had it for literal years. It was the first pattern that I actually purchased on Ravelry. And it is a Joji Locatelli pattern. At the time, I didn't really know who Joji was. I wasn't really part of the knitting community, but I just loved the shape of this sweater. So it was going to be one of my first sweaters, but I ended up knitting a different raglan sweater instead, so that I could, which I've shared my first sweater project with you. So I didn't do that one, and I did this one and a different one instead, but I've always wanted to knit it, and obviously because I bought the pattern. So I think that's what this is going to become, and hopefully it'll be a better fit for me and my wardrobe. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I had such a lovely time test knitting, but I think, did I even say the name of the pattern? I'm such a scatterbrain. So it's the Pole Sweater by Joji Locatelli. So it's a really interesting garment in terms of construction, because it's a big circle. It's a giant circle sweater, and I'm really excited to start knitting it. I need to do a gauge swatch when this yarn is dry. I'll do a gauge swatch and cast on the sweater. I'm so excited. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing, and you have to use a yarn that you can actually really aggressively block, because it's made with short rows, and it's a big circle. So like you have to be able to block the yarn out pretty aggressively so that you can get it to like be a circle, and fall the way you want it to fall. But yeah, I'm hoping, since now I have a lot more experience with sweaters, I have a lot more experience with knitting in general, hopefully I'll be able to complete this sweater, and it'll be a nice addition to my hand knit sweaters that I want to get rid of my store-bought sweaters. So those are the two sweaters that I have planned. And I recently picked up another pattern that I want to knit, and it is a pattern by Frenchie of Aroha Knits, so basically this podcast has turned into knit Aroha Knits and knit Joji Locatelli. That's the whole thing. So she's released her third Fiber Muse book, and in that book, one of the patterns is called the Wifty Top, and that is the next garment that is not a sweater that I'm going to be knitting. And it's a really cool on the bias, so it's like knit from corner to corner top, and you use your own measurements to figure out how big you want it, and so it's a lot more personalized than a lot of patterns. You don't have to do a whole lot of math to figure out how big you want it to be, or don't have to do a whole lot of math for like upper arm. Like, so I always have to do math for upper arm because I've got fairly large upper arms, so I have to make sure that the pattern is big enough for me, and then I have to do some math to figure it out. Anyway, this one is sleeveless, first of all, but it uses your measurements, your bust measurement, in order to figure out how wide you want it on the corners. Anyway, it's really neat. I really like it. And so as soon as it came out for a single release, I bought the pattern, and now I'm going to be knitting it, and I'm really excited about it. I have some yarn in mind, And it goes with my knitting from stash, which was one of my last blog posts, that I'm really trying to knit from stash this year instead of buying a whole bunch of new yarn. And because I know I have some beautiful skeins in my stash, and I would really just like them to be in projects rather than just in my closet. So I am going to be knitting it as sort of a fade style. So I'll show them yarns to you one at a time. So the first yarn I'm going to be using is this purple gorgeous skein by Frabjous Fibers. It's in the Amethyst colorway. I got it from the first Fiber Muse Alchemy kit. And this is the second skein. So I've already put one skein into my meandering shawl. And so the second skein I decided I wanted to do something else with, and I think this is the perfect project for it. So I'm really excited about that. So I think that's gonna be my first color. My second color is Knit Picks yarn, and it's this one. It's one of the Hawthorne fingering weights. It is called Happy Valley. It's got this gorgeous, bright, sort of flamingo pink and orange pop here, and then there's these deep blues and these purples that I think go really well together with the amethyst yarn. So that is my second color. And my third color is going to be this gorgeous Malabrigo sock. And I think this goes really well with both of them, actually. But I think they go really, really well together. And I'm hoping that 3 skeins is going to be enough to knit this top for myself. And if it's not, I do have some like grays and some like neutral colors that I can put in, like there are some seams that I can knit with those. And so hopefully that'll be enough yarn to do that. And yeah, I'm really, really excited for it. But yeah, so those are my 3 yarns. I do have to soak this yarn before I can use it again. Just because, so I had it in a cake because I was planning to use it for a different project, and then I didn't. I had it in a cake on one of my, in my room, and it was next to a salt lamp, and the salt lamp, like, got it all crusty and weird. So I have to soak it again before I can do that. So I'll soak these 2 things, and I'll block this thing today. So hopefully I'll be able to do that pretty soon. Or hopefully I'll be able to cast it on pretty soon. But my goal is to get the gift knits out of the way so that I can start all of these garments for myself. But that's the plan anyway. So that is, I think, everything that I wanted to talk about. Nope, I lied. I have one more work in progress that I forgot in my room. Hold on. Okay. So my last work in progress, like I promised there would be some cross stitch on this episode. So, so here it is. So this is the project I'm working on for my mother for Mother's Day. It is going to say, "I swear by my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you." It is a quote from Firefly. So yeah, and then it's gonna have some flowers around the edge, and I didn't mean to put it up here in the corner. I am going to cut it out, and frame it and send it to her. So she lives in California. Anyway, so this is my first, not my first cross stitch project, but it's probably going to be the first one that that is gifted to anyone else, or that I still care about. So, but yeah, so there are 11 words in it total, and I am 5 words in, so I'm almost halfway done. Hooray. I think that I'll be able to finish it by May, so yeah, that'll be good. So I am doing it on 28 count Aida cloth. Aida cloth? Aida? I don't know how to say it. Which means that it is fairly tiny, but I really do like how the stitches look. So I'm only using 1 thickness of embroidery floss, and anybody who's used embroidery floss before, there are 6 strands in it. I'm pulling 1 strand out and doing this with it, and it's very small, but it is really satisfying to see the whole word finished. The back of my work does not look very pretty. I'm not very good at keeping the back of my work pretty at all, but you can see like this actually looks fairly good. So hopefully I'll be able to, to mimic this on the rest of the words. I decided that I didn't want to do it letter by letter, because you're not going to be able to, so it's kind of hard to, I guess it's hard to tell. I wanted to do it word by word, basically. So I did. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It is kind of it's a project when I don't feel like knitting, but I still feel like doing something crafty. So there's that. But yeah, I think that was everything that I wanted to talk about after my forgetfulness before. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, for letting me talk my knitting with you. Everybody in my life is a little bit sick and tired of me talking about knitting, so it's really good to be able to share with people who understand. All right, so I'm hopefully gonna get back to a every 2 weeks kind of thing, because it is starting to be the slow season at my work, so I'll be able to have a lot more content to share. So thank you so much for watching. Again, you can find me at as Quarrelsome Rhino on Instagram. You can find me as Morux, M-O-R-U-X on Ravelry, and you can find me at skeinofthought.com, which is where all of the show notes will be for this episode once I get it uploaded. So I will put a link to that in the description box below. You can find everything I talked about and a couple of cool links to different things. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.